It is Ptolus Tuesday, everybody, and I'm asking a lot of you today, more so than I typically ask people when it comes to campaign prep and design and planning. I'm going to be asking you today to take some time and read this book cover to cover. Yes, Ptolus Studies 101 begins with the case for reading Ptolus cover to cover. And when I picked this book up, I had no idea how I was going to get through this thing. I mean, I figured I would read it, but I didn't know how I was going to read it. I will admit, I was intimidated when these books came in the house for the first time. Like, that is not material I can absorb. I just can't do it. And, but then when I committed to doing it and planned on doing it, I just set out to do a cover to cover read, which is how I read books. I always read things cover to cover. And it's a habit I picked up in grad school when I get a textbook rather than trying to figure out what sections the teacher wanted us to read or figure out why they wanted us to read those sections. I would just, pick the book up, carve the book up over the course of it was an 8-week every class was 8 weeks when I was in my MBA. And I would make sure that I was always ahead of where the teacher had us, but I would carve up every single night reading some of the book, which was interesting because I would often cover things that the teacher didn't intend for us to go over. And I thought I got more out of the books that way. And I was paying for them, right? So I should have got more out of those books. But when I mentioned reading the 670 plus pages of Ptolus cover to cover, or it's not plus, it's 670 pages, my friends said I was crazy and they couldn't do that. Well, I'm here to say that not only am I not crazy, I'm going to share with you a lesson plan of how to read this thing in 2 weeks. Now, I read it in 1 week, so you can do it in 2 weeks. To read this thing in 2 weeks, cover everything, and consume this information like it's meant to be. Like, I think it's supposed to be read like a textbook, and that's not a bad thing. A well-written textbook, which is this, should be educational and should be fulfilling. So let's kind of delve into this, and as we go through this lesson plan, this 14-day lesson plan, just remember, for the most part, I will be very specific on when I think you need to read things page by page, word by word. But a lot of this you can kind of skim read a bit. You can, just kind of flip through and easily carve out. I mean, I'll tell you now ahead of time, the last chunk of this book, pages 581 to 653, you're going to skim that at the end. I mean, it's monsters and character options. You don't need to have all that committed to memory. The most important things are the first days. And you're going to want to compound day over day, just try to retain what you can and move along. So this is the lesson plan. I will post it in the notes below, so you have it as well. But I encourage you to follow this plan. So pick a day, put it on your calendar, mark Ptolus Day, and get out your book. Okay. As you go through, I will remind you, make sure you use your ribbons. You have, I think, 4 of them. 3 or 4 of them, and your bookmarks, and get extra bookmarks, just so you need them. Day 1, settle in for the player's guide to Ptolus, about 30 pages after the table of contents. So it runs up to page 41, but a whole chunk of that's the table of contents, which you don't need to read, plus the intro by Monty, which you might want to read that because he's a cool dude. But really read this part. It's important. This is the most important base you're going to have as you work through this material. You need to know this. So read it like you would a book. Pour yourself a cup of coffee, make some tea, pour an IPA, sit down and read. That's day 1. All right, and have your players read this too, right before the campaign starts. Day 2. Chapter 2, the world, and Chapter 3, species, and Chapter 4, cosmology and religion, pages 42 through 77. A 35-page read, pretty deep stuff. Don't skimp on this. Read this word for word. Chapter 5 is going to come on day 3. So Chapter 5, history, and Chapter 6, organization. This is pages 78 through 133. I'm ramping you up. As you can tell, now you are hitting, almost 50 pages of reading in a day. Actually, a little more than 50 pages. It's 55 pages. and this is dense stuff. I think this was where I was the most intimidated by the book, was in this section. But the cool part is that it's going to get easier after here, I think, because after here you can do a little skimming here and there, but not too much. Day 4, let's get into the city with the city guide. So chapter 7, City by the Spire. Chapter 8, the docks, pages 136 to 169 in total. I lightened this day up. This is only 33 pages because it's more important for you to learn the structure of how the city is laid out. All right, so when you're going through the docks is not a long section. Just figure out how Monty and Sean and Bruce, how they're laying everything out to make it as easy as possible for you to have callbacks and come back to different sections of the city. You can skim read once you get to the docks, pieces of it. Really look for buzzwords, important characters that are in the story, and have your bookmarks ready, and maybe a notepad as well. We're going to be on this phase of reading through the city like a travel log or a travel guide for a bit. And from what I understand from listening to past interviews, that was sort of the plan. That these are written like a travel guide. So that was day 4. Day 5, chapters 9 and 10, the Guildsman District and Midtown. This is pages 170 to 213, and really focus on Midtown. A lot happens there in the story. It's where that's the center of the setting, really, is in Midtown in Delver Square. Day 6, so skip the Necropolis for right now and skip the Noble Quarters in chapter 12. So you've read chapter 9 and 10, day 5, and chapter 6. You're going right to chapter 12, and then move on to chapter 13 and 14, the North Market and Old Town. This is pages 257 to 316. Day 7, it's time for the Rivergate District, which is chapter 15 to start. Not that exciting, kind of dull actually. It's residential. And then do the South Market in chapter 16, the Temple District in chapter 17. A lot of material here, pages 317 to 371, but you're going to skim a lot of this. You don't need to commit every piece of this to memory. Just note things that you think are interesting. Day 8, go down to the Warrens, chapter 18. This is short, pages 379 to 372 to 379. 7 pages. Why? This is your break day. You've done 7 full days of reading. This is a light day, but I would really encourage you to go back on day 8 and take a look at what you may have missed. Maybe go back to Midtown and reread parts of Midtown. Day 9, time for the Necropolis. This is pages 214 to 256. This is chapter 11. You aren't visiting this with your players anytime soon unless you're running a high-level campaign, so don't worry about it. Day 10, below the city, where the good stuff happens that's not in the Necropolis. So chapter 19, what's down there. Chapter 20, the Undercity. 21, the sewers. 22, the caverns. 23, Dwarven Hearth. And read at pages 384 to 449. You have to come back to all this anyway when you're in your campaign. So you can skim a good bit of this and get a lot of information out of here. So just make sure when you're skimming, you're not dragging your eye from one corner of the page to the other in 1 second. You still want to scan each line and look for details that you might want to remember. Day 11, above the city. We're in the Spire. You aren't getting to this anytime soon. This is pages 352 to 495. Chapter 24 is Goth Gulgamel, and chapter 25 is Jebel Shamar. This is not stuff you need to even worry about for a while, but just make sure you understand the basics. Day 12, let's relax a bit with chapter 26 on being a resident, 27 on being a delver, 28 crime and the law, and 29 technology, and chapter 30 chaositech. I say relax. This is 39 pages that you need to read completely. I say relax because pour yourself a cup of coffee at this point and relax while you're reading it. This is some of the most important material in the book. One alternate suggestion would be that when you are on day 8 and you've just read the Warrens, to jump forward to day 12 and read some of this then. It would not feel out of place. Day 13, home stretch. Chapter 31, campaign advice. 32, urban campaigns, and 33, adventures. Read the first 2 completely. Skim the adventures, unless you plan on running the adventure. I am not running the adventures out of the book. I thought about it. I decided no. The adventures portion, though, pages 540 to 553 are the most important of day 13. So 13 pages are the most important. Read those word for word. The adventure, that's up to you. I would at least give it a quick glance through, but if you're not going to run it, don't worry about it. If you are planning on running it, I would add a day 15 and go back and just reread the adventure. Day 14 is the end. Chapter 34, monsters, 35, magic, and 36, character options, pages 583 to 653. Holy crap, why is it so much? Because you're going to skim it all. You don't need to read monsters, magic, and character options like word for word. You don't need to know that all. So just take a glance, see what's in there. You're going to come back to this time and time again, especially with the monster section. So don't feel like you have to just know every word of this unless you really want to. And that's it. You made it. You've gotten through this book in 14 days. You've made it. You don't get a certificate from anybody, but you should, right? So that's it. That's my lesson plan on how to devour Ptolus and make it something that you can kind of eternally download into your noggin. If you're running Ptolus right now, how did you learn the source material? Did you go nuts and read it cover to cover like I did? Did you put together some kind of plan? If you're going to run Ptolus and this plan works for you, let me know. Put all this stuff in the comments below. I'd be interested in reading them. And that's that. Thanks for watching. Happy Ptolus Tuesday, everybody, and I'll see you all tomorrow.